And all of a sudden you realise these are some of the people who are the least willing to do what Ten Hag says. How does that make you feel about what we're seeing and Ten Hag's situation that he finds himself in at United?
It just infuriates me. It does.
Laurie Whitwell has done an article for The Athletic that we need to go through. So he's been speaking about Manchester United's season as a whole. And it's a fantastic article, in depth, and there's so much to go into. One thing I really want to look at and go into is the sort of descent and difficulty that Ten Hag has faced this season.
Yeah.
There's a few different points here that I want to go through. So Jay and Joe, you can help me go through this. But there's a few things where I think that Ten Hag has been slagged off time and time again this season, and he was actually right.
Okay.
Or he was actually doing the right thing at the time that everyone else thought, and myself included, because we didn't know what was going on, that he was messing things up. So there's a few things. I want to start with tactical issues, because there's the big question that was on and off all season. We saw Jamie Carragher say to his face, that we've seen in the newspapers, we've seen all over social media, is this massive gap that United have had in the middle of the pitch, where the opposition would get the ball and there is a 40-yard gap between our strikers and midfielders and our defenders.
Yeah.
So in this article, Laurie Whitwell says the following. I'll get the quote and I'll get your thoughts on it. So he's talking about the ability to play a higher line with all the injuries that we've had. He says he continued to instruct for a higher starting point so that his team could squeeze the play in the final third to win the ball and counter quickly. It was the blueprint mapped out by the United hierarchy, but the personnel at his disposal, especially with Martinez injured for the vast majority of the campaign, were ill-equipped for that style. Often, they would drop deeper than Ten Hag intended, leaving large space for midfielders to cover. A clear example came in the FA Cup win over Liverpool when Kelleher claimed a Bruno Fernandes free kick that Varane and Lindelof had got in the box to meet. As Varane and Lindelof jogged back, Ten Hag shouted and demonstrated with his palms down that they should stop just beyond the halfway line. When they fell further back, he slapped his hands in frustration. Now that's been something that Ten Hag's had, that's one example, but that's been a criticism of United and their tactics, and Ten Hag in particular, all season, hasn't it?
Yeah.
This thing of why are the defenders sitting so deep when we're playing this high pressing attack, and by the sound of it, he didn't want that.
No. Well, I know it's easy to see it now when Laurie's done this deep dive, and we're going to chat to Laurie about this as well. Get him to go through his article next week. But you think, oh, that's obvious. But there's a part of me, I remember seeing what Jamie Carragher was saying on Monday Night Football and agreeing with him.
Yeah.
Saying these gaps are massive, and you think, look, Erik ten Hag, whether you rate him or not, is one of the best managers in Europe. He is. Look at his CV, look at what he's won, look at the job he's doing. Even though United was struggling in the league, if you were to list all the managers in Europe, he'd be right near the top.
Yeah.
He would. And if he'd have left United, he'd have got a good job. He would have. Jamie Carragher is probably, if he was looking for work, would struggle to get in the top 100 clubs in management.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would take a punt on him. He'd probably be in the Championship just because of his name. So why can Jamie Carragher see that? And Erik ten Hag can? Why can Stephen Howson and Joe Smith see it and Erik ten Hag can't, or Joe McGrath? And we just see, is Erik ten Hag that bad a manager? He's not seen some of that obvious. Or is he seeing it and he's trying to fix it, but the players aren't listening to him? And from what I gather from the point you're making there, is he saw it, he wanted to do something about it, and he wasn't getting listened to.
Yeah. And how much of it, Joe, is... Obviously, there's two roles that are sort of fundamental roles that a coach or a teacher or a manager has. One is having the knowledge and the ideas. That's one big thing, obviously. You have to have the tactics. But another huge part of being a manager or a teacher or a coach or parent or whatever is presenting your ideas in a way that people listen to them.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe that can be the big criticism of Ten Hag? Or do you just think the players have got to do what they're told regardless?
It's so tricky because you look at the tools he had so obviously he was trying to build something, but yet the tools available to him time and time again just weren't what he wanted. So does he then change his master plan, what he would like United to be, and adapt, which may have brought us, more points in the league, or does he just keep on trying? I don't know if he'll look at this season and go, he kept on trying, but unfortunately, we can't look past the fact that this is the worst season we've had in Premier League history. And that was because his master plan just didn't come off. And obviously, we got silverware at the end of the year, but that's because in great one-off games, he got the best out of the players. Some of our favourite moments this year at Liverpool, at Old Trafford, City at Wembley. Something happened in those games which is a little bit magical. But you'll look at his master plan and you'll see us sat in 8th with minus goal difference. Goes, maybe my master plan could have waited until I did have the tools ready for me to implement them, and I could have changed things up a bit. I personally think he could have changed things up a little bit and waited for the right people to be available. But then again, I'm not a manager.
There's one thing that it says also in this article about being willing to be flexible a little bit. And I think that's one thing people have criticised him for, or another thing they've criticised him for, is that he seems very strict and stubborn. But there was a point where he mentioned about United going long with David De Gea last season. We all saw it, where the first couple of games we got absolutely annihilated, trying to play out from the back. Then all of a sudden from the Liverpool game, and a little bit sort of from that point on, we were playing longer balls and all that sort of thing. So I think he has been a little bit flexible, but maybe at times he could have done it a little bit more. I think there's another point where they say how a couple of the people have gone to him and spoke about being a little bit more pragmatic as the season went on, rather than trying to implement this style that is costing us 20 shots a game, basically. I want to move on to another point about dissenting voices within the dressing room. And there's some fantastic stuff in here about, sort of, it goes all the way back to last season or the season before last, talking about Cristiano Ronaldo. So I want to start with this, where it says, Cristiano Ronaldo was something of a litmus test. Ten Hag tried to get Ronaldo to press, not least because of his own ideals, but also due to the wish from directors for a high-intensity style. So he's been told, you need to play like this, Ten Hag is, and also Ten Hag's going, yeah, no, I want to play like this.
Yeah.
He made allowances. Rather than asking for 3 distinct runs, as he would do with a young player in terms of pressing, he wanted 2. For example, chasing the first defender on the ball, then following to the goalkeeper before dropping back into shape if unsuccessful. That's what he's asking Ronaldo to do. Ronaldo was coached on this time and time again, but made minimal movements in training, according to people with direct knowledge of the sessions, leaving some staff to wonder if he understood. So that's one point on Cristiano Ronaldo. At this point, he's a 38-year-old, 37-year-old, whatever he is, and maybe he's thinking, this isn't the best way for me to score goals by doing this. But you have a person there who isn't following the game plan despite being told time and time again. It goes on to say after that, Casemiro and Varane spoke to teammates about the similar approaches taken by Ancelotti and Zidane at Real Madrid, which gave players more freedom and greater agency on workload, and how Ten Hag's positional style of play was not to their taste. So these are 2 of the biggest names in the squad. 2 of the most highly paid players in the squad. Ronaldo is the highest paid player in the history of Manchester United. And these 3 are some of the players who are directly opposing what Ten Hag is trying to implement here and undermining it by basically saying to teammates, this is a load of shit. They were told by staff that Madrid is a completely different club to United, and La Liga is a slower competition with less strength in depth than the Premier League. So some of those same liberal techniques don't work. But Casemiro and Varane, having won multiple titles, had strong feelings and became dissenting voices. When you hear that, and we look at these players as like, they're here to drag us to win trophies. Look at him, Casemiro in the final of the Carabao, Varane, Champions League Varane. And all of a sudden you realise these are some of the people who are the least willing to do what Ten Hag says. How does that make you feel about what we're seeing and Ten Hag's situation that he finds himself in at United?
It just infuriates me. It does. It's just ridiculous to say this isn't how I did it in Madrid. This isn't what Ancelotti did or Zidane did. I agree with whoever said that. That's got nothing to do with what's going on at the minute. Erik ten Hag's coming, he's the manager, he's asking you to play a certain way. You get on board with it. Yeah. Cristiano Ronaldo, right, you could see he wasn't happy with Erik ten Hag. That first game, where you remember when he came back from pre-season, we had that game at Old Trafford, I think it was at Sociedad, we played, and he left at half time. Do you remember the sort of footage of him in the first half where Erik ten Hag was giving instructions, and he's like, you could see he was being moody with him, and he was shouting at him and snapping at him. Was it Ralph Rangnick that said pressing is like being pregnant? You're either pregnant or you're not. You can't be a bit pregnant. You can't a bit press. And he's trying to accommodate Ronaldo and saying, okay, well, don't press as much as you should. Just do it a little bit. He doesn't understand. Of course he understands. Well, Cristiano Ronaldo's been a professional footballer for nearly 20 years or more than 20 years. He knows what the coach is telling him to do when the coach is asking him to press a football. My 9-year-old son knows that, right? So I don't buy into the idea that he didn't understand. I think he just didn't want to do it. He thought, this isn't for me. And you could see by the fact he went on Piers Morgan after he'd been playing under Ten Hag for about a month or whatever it was, and spat his dummy out. And as for Casemiro and Varane, Casemiro, right, we need to have a bit more genuine about Casemiro at Manchester United. First season, good,
Yeah.
He had some very good games. That Carabao Cup final was fantastic. Other good games as well. But he had some poor ones. It took him a while to get going. He also got himself sent off twice, albeit rather harshly, but it still happened. His second season, not great at all. If you want to show everyone what you're about, you want to teach us what went on at Real Madrid, play like you did at Real Madrid. Lift the team up, show the team up, be a leader. Don't just spit your dummy out and go, well, Carlo Ancelotti didn't ask me to do that. And then put in 4 out of 10 performances. Some of the performances we've seen from Casemiro this season have been abysmal.
Yeah.
And I'm not hating on him. I'm just calling it as I said at the time. Performance against Crystal Palace, performance against Arsenal, performance against Brentford was just shockingly bad.
Yeah.
And Varane, I love Varane. And it's disappointing that he didn't want to be a bit more of an ally, for want of a better word, to Erik Ten Hag, because I think it's just counterproductive to moan about the manager, to undermine the manager, especially when the manager's new. So yeah, I feel sorry for Erik Ten Hag, I really do.
Yeah. I just want to get your thoughts on another point. This is about Sancho, and this is almost like it's like written like a horror story. This when you know the outcome and why it happened. So this is talking about Ten Hag and Sancho. He felt Sancho was an incredible player, but that his attitude did not correspond to a winning culture. His patience had been stretched months earlier after his second game in charge away to Brentford, when Sancho told him United had bought the wrong player because his preference was to play on the left rather than on the right. This guided Ten Hag's decision to go for a player in that position in the remaining days of the transfer window, ultimately Antony. So this whole story of Jadon Sancho getting pissed off that Antony's starting at right wing ahead of him, and that's one of the reasons he supposedly threw his toys out the pram. One of the reasons we bought Antony, by the sound of it, is because Sancho's walking around saying, if you think I'm playing at right wing, you've bought the wrong player.
Yeah. He must have been like, what the fuck? Those first moments as Man United manager, where you might think, your thoughts and ideas and what you might have brought to the table, what you might have envisioned for each individual player. Once you step foot in the role and you're getting thrown, tantrums by Ronaldo, plays in the squad, complaining already, and then Sancho knocking on your door saying that you've not got the right player here, that must be the biggest headache in football. Yeah. And then you go, cracky, I've got to try and get this team into a shape and to a Man United quality, because one of the biggest teams in the world, all eyes are on me. So you've got to feel for him in those certain regards, because these aren't just small squad players. These are the players that you'd probably say could win stuff for United, and they're throwing the toys at the prom a bit.
There's a reason why squads who are young players, like, you can come in and you can keep winning with a successful team, but to go from a team that doesn't win stuff like United to a team that wins things, you need usually a young core of players who are desperate to impress.
I think
not
I was on
jaded players who have passed their best.
I think I was on this pod. We talked about getting players in their or their ideal players to build a team around is catching them in their first or second contract, where they have either come through the ranks and they are very excited to play football. That's their first good contract, where they might be on 20, 30, £50,000. Then there's the second contract, which is where they're really establishing that they're a brilliant player. They may be 21, 22, and then they creep into the 100. When you've got someone on their third or fourth contract like Casemiro and Varane, they're already thinking possibly about retirement, how much money they make. They don't really care too much. And that's unfortunately what we were hearing there, because he's going, there's chat about Varane and going, well, we did it better in Madrid, and they're not ready to change because they're on that good money. They've been there, done it. I'm not asked. I used to do this and this. Like, that's not what you needed, Ten Hag.
No, it's not what you needed at all. So we're going to go through that full thing with Laurie Whitwell on Monday, so make sure you check that out and stick around for that.